Look closely at the walls of the great cathedral, and you will find a single, deeply carved word, ananke. This is the Greek word for fate, and it is the single, inescapable theme that defines Victor Hugo's masterpiece, Notre-Dame de Paris. This novel is a colossal Gothic tragedy set in the Paris of 1482, where beauty is persecuted, devotion is grotesque, and love is doomed. This is not a simple love triangle. It is a complex, fatal quadrangle involving four figures caught in the rigid hierarchies and superstitions of the late Middle Ages. Esmeralda, the beautiful, innocent, and free-spirited gypsy street dancer who embodies purity and the vanishing spirit of true Paris. Quasimodo, the deaf, half-blind, and physically monstrous bell ringer of Notre Dame, who harbors a soul of immense devotion and tenderness. Claude Frollo, the Archdeacon of the cathedral, a brilliant scholar and alchemist whose profound intellect is tragically consumed by forbidden lust. Phoebus de Châteaupers, the handsome captain of the king's archers, who embodies superficiality, vanity, and the fleeting nature of courtly love. The true central character, however, is the Cathedral of Notre Dame itself. It stands as the silent, stony witness to the entire tragedy, a physical symbol of medieval faith, law, and ultimate sanctuary. We will follow the converging paths of these doomed figures, exploring how misplaced love, religious repression, and relentless social prejudice lead to a climax of monumental devastation. Get ready to witness the power of Ananke as we plunge into the dark heart of 15th century Paris. Our journey into the stone and soul of the city begins now. The Carnival and the Cursed Trio. The novel opens on a chaotic, vibrant day, the Feast of Fools, Fête des Fous, in January 1482, celebrated in the vast hall of the Palais de Justice. This festival is a temporary inversion of the social order, a day when the lowest can mock the highest. The primary event is the election of the Pope of Fools, the man with the most grotesque face. The winner, by a unanimous, horrified acclamation, is Quasimodo. He is the bell ringer of Notre Dame, a figure of staggering physical deformity, hunchbacked, club-footed, and possessing a massive, grotesque face with a cataract and a pronounced lower jaw. He is also deafened by the deafening sound of his own beloved bells. Quasimodo is not a man. He is a despised outcast, viewed as a monster by the Parisian mob, but he harbors a soul capable of absolute unconditional love, primarily for two beings: the cathedral, his home, and his master, Claude Frollo. The second pivotal figure introduced that day is Esmeralda. She is a 16-year-old gypsy dancer whose presence is described as pure light and vitality. She dances in the square, accompanied by her pet goat, Yali, capturing the imagination and hearts of every man who sees her. Her beauty and innocence represent the ideal of free, natural humanity, which is instantly threatening to the rigid, oppressive society. The Feast of Fools thus brings the three destined men into Esmeralda's orbit: Quasimodo, whose immediate, overwhelming devotion is born of shared outcast status; Claude Frollo, the Archdeacon, who is tragically present and witnesses Esmeralda's dance. Frollo is Quasimodo's adoptive father and master, a brilliant ascetic scholar devoted to science, alchemy, and theology. But Esmeralda's appearance shatters his years of monastic repression, igniting a devastating forbidden lust that he mistakes for a curse. Phoebus de Châteaupers, the captain of the king's archers, handsome, dashing, but utterly shallow and vain. Esmeralda, confusing his superficial gallantry for true love, immediately becomes hopelessly infatuated with him. The scene is set. The beautiful, the monstrous, the scholarly, and the vain are drawn together by the power of the gypsy dancer. The initial spark of the tragedy is Frollo's decision. Consumed by his desire, he orders Quasimodo to kidnap Esmeralda, believing that only by possessing her physically can he extinguish the destructive fire she has lit in his soul. The obsessions: love, lust, and salvation. The attempted kidnapping is the first major action that intertwines the fates of the four main characters and reveals the different destructive forms of their love. The kidnapping attempt is thwarted by Captain Phoebus and his men. Esmeralda, saved by the handsome officer, is convinced that Phoebus is her noble, destined savior, solidifying her naive and ultimately fatal devotion to him. She offers him her only treasure, a lucky amulet, completely misunderstanding his shallow intentions. Quasimodo is captured and taken to the pillory. His punishment is brutal. He is tied, exposed to the blistering sun, and tormented by the Parisian mob, the very people who just crowned him their pope. His deafness prevents him from even crying out for water. In this moment of utter desolation, Esmeralda performs the novel's pivotal act of pure, selfless compassion. She approaches the pillory and offers the despised, disfigured monster a cup of water. This simple, transcendent act instantly transforms Quasimodo's devotion into a fierce, unwavering, and protective love that becomes the primary moral force of the novel. He is no longer bound by duty to Frollo, but by devotion to his savior. Meanwhile, Claude Frollo descends into a pit of spiritual and intellectual agony. His obsession with Esmeralda is not just lust, it is a terrifying crisis of faith and intellect. He seeks her in his secret chambers, which are filled with his alchemical equipment and scholarly texts. He sees the chaos she represents as the ultimate test of his will, a challenge from the devil himself. He cannot reconcile his profound, intellectual dedication to God and knowledge with the burning, earthly desire for Esmeralda's body. He becomes a tragic figure of the collapsing medieval mind, using his immense intellect only to rationalize his own base impulses. Frollo learns that Esmeralda is hopelessly in love with Phoebus. Driven mad by jealousy, Frollo follows the couple to a rendezvous. As Phoebus attempts to seduce Esmeralda with only careless physical intentions, Frollo, hiding in the darkness, stabs Phoebus and flees, leaving Esmeralda to be discovered beside the bleeding captain. The scene is orchestrated by Frollo to ensure that he possesses her in death if he cannot possess her in life, and that the beautiful dancer is instantly branded a murderess and a sorceress. The Sanctuary, Esmeralda, Torture, and Refuge. The tragedy accelerates as the medieval justice system, driven by superstition and prejudice, takes hold of Esmeralda. She is immediately arrested, accused of the murder of Phoebus, who is only wounded but quickly abandons her, and charged with sorcery, due to her gypsy origins and her goat Jolly, who performs tricks. The trial sequence is a chilling indictment of medieval cruelty and injustice. Esmeralda, tortured and broken, is forced to confess to a crime she did not commit. Her fate seems sealed. She is condemned to be hanged in the public square. On the day of her execution, as Esmeralda is being led through the square, completely despairing and seeing no sign of the cowardly Phoebus, she is suddenly saved by a tremendous, impossible force. Quasimodo, watching from the high towers of Notre Dame, descends on a rope, snatching Esmeralda up and carrying her away into the safety of the cathedral. As he stands on the balcony, holding the terrified woman above the raging mob, he bellows the ancient sacred declaration, "Sanctuary." The cathedral, by ancient tradition, is a place of absolute refuge where the civil law cannot touch the accused. This is the moment when the physical symbol of the building becomes the actual center of the drama. Quasimodo, driven by his pure love, uses the immense stone structure as his weapon and his defense. He hides Esmeralda in his tower room near his beloved bells, providing her with food, warmth, and constant, quiet, protective devotion. This period of refuge is the moral high point of the novel. It is here that Esmeralda, though still pining for Phoebus, begins to recognize the genuine, profound humanity that lies beneath Quasimodo's monstrous exterior. She is protected by a monster with the soul of an angel, while pursued by an archdeacon with the soul of a demon. Meanwhile, Frollo, consumed by jealousy and realizing that the cathedral protects her from the law but not from him, continues his destructive pursuit. He spies on them, desperate to find a way to circumvent the holy laws of sanctuary and claim her for himself, leading him to a dark pact with the king's forces. The Mob and the Madwoman: Attack on the Cathedral. The final devastating sequence of the novel begins when the Parisian rabble, led by the charismatic rogue and poet Pierre Gringoire, Esmeralda's reluctant husband by gypsy custom, and the king of the truands, beggars, decide to attack the cathedral. They believe Esmeralda, still held within, is being punished by the priests, and they seek to free her, mostly because they fear the king is preparing to abolish their court of miracles, their sanctuary. Quasimodo, seeing the mob storming his beloved home, misinterprets their intentions. He believes they are trying to seize Esmeralda and deliver her to the executioner. Driven by his protective instinct, he defends the cathedral with the ferocity of a wild beast, dropping massive stones, beams, and lead from the roof onto the attackers below, inadvertently killing many of the very people who sought to save Esmeralda. Amidst the chaos, the tragic backstory of La Gitanita, the little gypsy, is revealed. Esmeralda is not truly a gypsy. She is the long-lost daughter of Paquette la Chantefleurie, Sister Gudule, a hermit woman living in a cell who has spent 15 years mourning her stolen child, clutching the baby's tiny embroidered shoe, the only relic left behind. Esmeralda herself wears the matching shoe, and in a moment of terrible revelation, the mother and daughter recognize each other. This is the novel's moment of brief, agonizing happiness, instantly shattered by fate. As the king's archers, led by the opportunistic Phoebus, arrive to suppress the riot, Frollo makes his final, terrible move. He tricks Esmeralda into leaving the protection of her mother and the cathedral, promising safety. Instead, he offers her a choice: marry him or hang. Esmeralda, repulsed by his desperate lust and still faithful to her illusory love for Phoebus, defiantly chooses death. Frollo, with cold malice, delivers her to the hangman. He then stands with Quasimodo on the highest balcony of the cathedral to watch the execution. When the despairing Quasimodo finally understands the full horror of what has happened and sees Frollo laughing at the death of the woman he loved, the monstrous bell ringer performs his final righteous act. He lets out a single, earth-shattering wail of grief, seizes his master, the archdeacon, and hurls him from the height of the cathedral to his death on the pavement below. Quasimodo then vanishes, leaving only the executed body of Esmeralda and the crushed body of Frollo. The symbolism of the stone, the novel's legacy. The novel concludes with a quiet, profound resolution that transcends the melodrama of the immediate events. The ultimate lesson is that human justice is blind, corrupt, and cruel, but fate, Ananke, is absolute. Esmeralda dies for a crime she didn't commit, Frollo dies by the hand of the monster he created, and Quasimodo dies from the pain of betrayed love. Phoebus lives unscathed, illustrating the terrible truth that superficiality often triumphs over sincere emotion in the world of men. Quasimodo's final act is revealed 2 years later. Searchers discover 2 entangled skeletons in the mass grave reserved for executed criminals. One is the broken, grotesque form of Quasimodo. The other is the delicate skeleton of Esmeralda. They were found holding each other, and when the searchers tried to separate them, the monstrous skeleton turned to dust. This quiet, powerful image is the novel's final statement. In death, the beautiful and the damned, the monster and the angel, finally achieve the unity that society and fate denied them in life. The cathedral itself is the novel's greatest character. Hugo dedicates entire chapters to detailing its architecture, history, and every stone. The book is, in part, a plea to preserve the great Gothic structures from the destruction of modernization and poor restoration. The cathedral symbolizes the soul of the city. It is the central anchor around which all human drama revolves. The failed sanctuary. Though it offered refuge, its laws were ultimately overturned by human malice. The Book of Stone. Hugo argues that architecture was the dominant form of expression in the Middle Ages, the Book of Stone that preceded the Book of Paper. The printing press, the Book of Paper, will ultimately destroy the reign of the cathedral, the Book of Stone, symbolizing the end of the medieval era. Notre-Dame de Paris is, therefore, a massive meditation on transition. It chronicles the painful, tragic moment when medieval superstition and absolute faith clash with the dawning of the Renaissance, where lust and intellectual curiosity destroy old certainties. The true legacy of the novel is the enduring image of the monster who loved purely, the scholar who fell completely, and the innocent who paid the price, all observed by the impassive, eternal stone gaze of the great cathedral.